Hey everybody, this is the second update of my air bike project, which is my ultralight. And I've got a bunch of stuff to cover, but I'm going to try to condense it into a pretty short video because I hate long videos. But I do have a lot to talk about since my first update. The very first update, we just went over the drawings and we talked about some different things. I got a lot of emails after that, and I hope you all take this right. I love all the emails, but also understand I had 5 different people tell me 5 different ways to do something. And while I appreciate all of the advice, and I definitely look at it and read it and take it on advisement, there's certain ways that I'm going to do this process on learning it as I do it. Half the fun for me is the learning process as I do this, okay? By no means do I want to make something unsafe or I want to tear something up, but there was just some pretty silly emails pointing out things, things are discontinued, things that haven't been around for 15 years, just some crazy stuff was emailed to me. In all, I got over 35 emails from my first video, and I'd say most of them were really positive. A couple of them were just crazy. What can I say? So what I want to do in this video, though, is I want to talk about a little bit of the method to my madness in this. So I'm taking on the hardest part first in this aircraft, which is the fuselage. This is the bottom frame of the fuselage, okay? And hopefully over here you're going to see some different videos of some test welds I did. I tack weld this all together. I had somebody, I shared a picture with this and told me that my welds were way too hot. Well, these white things in between here are ABS. So if I'm welding 1.5 inches from ABS and it's not melting, my weld's not too hot, okay? So the thing is that I've got a bunch of friends from the aerospace community, people that are real hardcore TIG welders. I've sent them pictures. I've cut up some of the parts to look at the penetration, my test parts, not the fuselage. And I feel really comfortable with where I'm at with my welds, okay? So don't send me emails on how to grind my tungsten. Don't send me emails on that my welds look like crap. I don't plan on having those picture perfect, beautiful TIG welds. It takes somebody's 20 years to learn how to do because I'm just welding up a fuselage. So that's one thing I want to kind of touch on. So I want to make these videos, but I don't want to get stressed out because people are posting things that they have zero experience at, okay? So the fuselage right now, the bottom, what I'm calling the bottom foundation of the fuselage, is tack welded up, okay? Hopefully over here you're seeing some pictures of my tack welds. And you're also going to see some pictures of the jig I made. I wanted to make sure I built a jig that all of this would be within 1/8 of an inch of being straight. Now, one thing about the jig that when I shared a picture of it, somebody says, well, look, this isn't straight down the middle. These vertical supports here aren't necessarily the center of the fuselage. I took and I printed a 170-inch long plot on my plotter, and I laminated to the table the actual footprint of the bottom of the fuselage. So what I do is I take my square and I run my square up, and right as it touches here, it touches exactly where it's supposed to be on the plan. So anywhere I go along through here and put my square on this, right as it touches, it's touching the line. So I know that by using levels, the bottom of the fuselage is level. I know that the rear post here is straight up and down in both axes. So this is straight within about 1/8 of an inch. And what I mean by 1/8 of an inch is there are some places down the side of the fuselages that both rods are inside my line about 1/8 of an inch. One's not on the line and one off, so the plane is definitely centered. But I want you to all understand that this is going to be pretty accurate within 1/8 of an inch. So what I've got to do next is I still have to weld in the diagonal supports that are in the bottom of this. And then from there, I will bring a jig up through here that will hold the top post that runs down the top middle of the fuselage, and then from there on, diagonals go on, which strengthen the tail of the fuselage. So this is extremely, extremely slow compared to working with wood. And I know there's going to be people out there saying, if you built wood right, wood would take just as long. And look, you're right. Well, I don't know if you're right. Okay, you know me. I don't want to post anything in my videos or have anybody chime in something that's not factual. The reason I do these videos is to help you learn along with me. Okay, what drives me nuts is when people post things that are wrong, because people who don't know any better might take that as fact. So if you see me erasing a bunch of stuff on either my Facebook or my YouTube, it's because you're wrong. People have pointed out what you've posted is not accurate. So one of the things about building this fuselage and building it straight and making sure that everything goes together is kind of a process that we're all going to learn together. So the next thing on the fuselage is to put in the diagonals, put in the top post, put in the cross bracing, and then start building the front half of it so that I build the fuselage. But I guess the thing is that I had forgotten. I've worked with chromoly before a long time ago, but nothing like this. And I just forgot how long it takes to grind the metal to make it fit perfect. Now, everybody kind of went crazy saying, you've got to get a notcher. You've got to get a notcher. Now, one reason at the beginning I didn't get a notcher was because I have not found hardly anybody out there that has found a notcher that works when you are cutting 5/8 and 1/2 inch material. When you're over 3/4 inch, notchers work great. But the problem is, and I don't have one that I can show you easily. I don't think I can take this off. But, well, here's an example. So I'm not sure how good you're going to be able to see this. But when I look at this 1/2 inch hole saw, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's only 7 teeth on this. So when you think of a hacksaw and the way a hacksaw goes through metal, even though this is made for metal, this has 7 teeth. And whatever pi is, this is a 1/2 inch wide, so whatever pi is. I'm not going to get out my calculator and do it. But what is that, 1.5 inches about? 3.1, yeah, whatever. So in 1.5 inches, I only have 7 teeth. So what happens is, as this starts to cut through the material, when it gets about 2/3 of the way, it starts to grab. Well, the moment it grabs, it moves because the thin wall 1/4 inch tube is so small, it moves the tube. Okay, this isn't moving, the tube's bending a little bit. And then you don't get a perfect cut. So I bought me a notcher against my own instinct, because everybody out there told me, look, if you're doing 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch, a notcher might not work. Well, I needed to try. So what I've done, and hopefully you'll see some of the pictures now. Let me find them here. I have made some really neat 3D printed copes. And the way the coping works is I slide it on, whoops, wrong size diameter. Well, no, hang on, I got big ones in here. Here they are. So 5/8 inch tube here, and hopefully over here you're seeing me show some of these pictures. But one of the hardest things I have come across on notching this is making sure it's on the same axis. So if you imagine that I've got a piece of metal that is running across here, okay, a tube running between the 2 longerons here, and they're off at all, they're not going to line up. And you can cut a perfect cope on one side, but that other cope has to be at 0 degrees of that cope's axis. So what I did was I 3D printed these little templates. And this is slick. So let's say I slide it on both of them onto a piece of metal. I now lay this on a table. Now they are perfectly on the correct axis. I take my magic marker and I mark where my cope's got to be cut. put it in my vise, and take my grinder and grind the shit out of it. And I end up with a perfect piece. Now, another really cool thing of doing it this way is I have plotted out on my plotter what each of these links are. I can lay this on the drawing and measure the inside curve of each of those copes down to a 32nd of an inch. And when I cut it the first time and I put it in here, it slides right in. So it does take a lot of time to draw this 3D, and keep in mind, when I draw this in 3D, I can change. So this right here, hopefully over here I'm showing some of this. I just don't know if I've got pictures of all of this. So this right here is made for 0 degrees. Okay, this is a 0 degree cope. See this big angle here? That is for 27 degrees. So if I slide this on to my 1/2 inch and I mark my line around here, and then I grind that all away, I end up with a perfect cope that is a diagonal. Okay, but what's awesome is I put the other end on this and I lay it on a table and line both of these up, and they're both exactly 0 on the axis. So this is kick-ass. Does it take a lot of time? Yes. Now, I just want to show you one other thing I've been doing if I didn't throw it away. There's a program that you can download. This is a 13 degree cope. And what you do is you wrap this around your piece of metal and tape it on, and then you take your marker and mark it. So if I know I've got something I'm going to do a lot of, I can 3D print the cope. If I know I'm only going to use it once, like on the diagonals that go across here, each one changes by 2 degrees each time I go down the airplane. So it's easier to print this with paper and mark it than it is to 3D print that. But if I've got copes I know I'm going to use over and over again, like a 90 degree cope, I'll print it with my 3D printer. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm super excited. I'm not sure how to express how cool, how rewarding this has been so far. Been extremely busy with work and family. Emma's part of this We the People thing where she debates the Constitution and all the rights, and we've been going to that, and it's absolutely been exciting. So family and work has consumed a lot of my life. This probably actually only has 3 or 4 hours in it, but it's been late at night during the week. In some ways, I hoped I would be farther along with this than I am, but this is not a race. I already know this is going to be a 2 to 3 year project. Plus, it's got to be a 2 to 3 year project because I can't afford an engine anytime soon for this. Engine's going to be between $3 and $5 grand. That's a lot of money, and that's money I don't have right now. And but that's kind of this update, everybody. I'm going to try to do these at least once a week. I really hope to do them twice a week or more. But I've just been really busy, and I just didn't have the time to get this out there, okay? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. I don't know how to stress how long it takes to get this metal to really work perfect. Some pieces that you have to freehand a little bit. I mean, these copes get you close, get you down to about, I'm guessing, 1/16 of an inch. But one thing I found out with the TIG welding, yeah, actually this is something I do want to explain real quick. Let me see if I got any copes, practice copes cut, and I don't. Okay, so the tighter this fits, the cope, okay? I mean, as perfect as it is, if you can't get a feeler gauge in there, when you go to weld it, it's a lot easier. If you got an air gap in there at all, you got to be really, really careful. And one of the things I always do when I'm welding the two pieces, now imagine there's a cope in this, there should be a cope in this. I always start, if you're at the end of a piece of metal and start to weld on it, it can cause the end to curl down, or you can burn right through it, okay? When you start in the middle of a piece here, the heat goes out into it, and it doesn't get centralized in one spot as fast. So what I always do when I start my weld is, I start on the big pipe, on the solid tube first, and I get it hot, and right as it starts to puddle, I'll then move into this piece and get it to puddle. The moment those two start to fuse together or mix, then I start putting in my filler rod. And that way I end up, now look, it's not a beautiful weld like these guys doing, you know, stacking the quarters or dimes or whatever the hell you call it. But it's a good structural weld because I see all the metal intermixing, my filler rod's intermixing, and I tell you, it is a bitch. I mean, if you're a TIG welder, you learned a long time ago what I'm learning right now. But it's a bitch to constantly change the radius as you're coming around this. And I've only done it on practice pieces. I haven't had to do it on the airframe yet. But it is a bitch to do that radius while dipping and moving your body and not dip into the weld and have to regrind your tungsten. Now, I felt pretty good because when I did all the tack welds on the bottom of this, I didn't dip one time my electrode into the metal. So I was kind of like, holy crap, I got through without having to regrind. And I'm telling you, if you're new to TIG welding, if you ever dip into the molten metal, shut it down and regrind it. Because if you keep going, you'll see the flame basically, or whatever it's called, just moving, dancing all around. It's really hard to control the heat in one spot. Another beautiful thing about using the foot pedal with this kind of stuff is that this is so thin wall that I start off kind of cool on the pedal. I get my arc started and I start to advance my throttle until I see it start to puddle, and then I'll stop. And then as I start to add rod, if I realize it's not intermingling, I'll give it a little bit more throttle. And I tell you, I love that I'm learning to use the pedal because I can completely control the heat that way. And if it was a thick piece of metal, it wouldn't matter, okay? I've gotten a couple of emails from madmen or people, or the crazy people, saying, oh, don't use the pedal, just use the knob. Then I have somebody email me and say, look, if you're doing 1/4-inch metal and you're binding two pieces, absolutely, you don't need the pedal. If you're doing thin wall chromoly, you want the pedal so you don't burn through. So I hope I'm helping people out there. I hope I'm not stirring up a whole bunch of more emails because look, everybody, I don't need the hassle. I want to do these videos to help educate you while I learn. That's the only reason I've ever done these videos, is to help you all go along for the ride that I'm learning. So if I make a mistake, we're all learning together. Don't say, oh, you're a fool for making that mistake. I'm learning. So that's my video. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you all absolutely are as psyched as I am that this thing in about 2.5 years, I'm going to strap it on and go flying around. Somebody sent me a really neat email and said, how did that, and I want to really make this accurate because it was really a deep kind of an email. But said, you know, what is the butterflies going to be like that day that you go to fly this? You know? And the thing is I have not flown a tail dragger in over 25 years, where I was pilot in command. The last tail dragger I flew was a T6, and I mean, I did taxi it, and I kind of took it off, but I had a real fighter pilot in the back seat looking over me, and I did log it as dual instruction in a tail dragger. But, you know, they asked me what I thought. Was I going to have butterflies? And you bet your ass I'm going to have butterflies. I have butterflies every time I took off an airplane. Every time I ever flew a full-scale, even a model airplane, you have a little bit of butterflies because it's that takeoff is when everything can kind of get wonky and kind of go wrong. But am I afraid of flying the plane? Absolutely not. Now, I'll go out and taxi it some and make sure that I understand how long, you know, my tail is and the way that the tail dragger kind of reacts on the ground. Now, being an ultralight, I won't have wheel brakes. I'll only have my rudder and my tail wheel, but I'll be in grass. I don't ever plan on flying this on pavement. Because even when I was getting my tail dragger endorsement, I hated flying a cub off pavement. I love flying it off grass. So, but I'm not scared to fly this plane at all. I think I'm a pretty accomplished pilot, and even though it's been a lot of years, this thing's max speed is 55 miles an hour, and I'll just give it the throttle and go flying it. So thanks everybody for watching the videos. I'm going to get this one shut off so I can get back to working on this. Tonight, I'm going to be measuring off what all the diagonal links off and getting them cut on my bandsaw. I'm going to print out, because all these copes are different, I'm going to print out all of those on PDFs and start marking it all. And maybe later tonight start grinding. And just so you know, the way I grind is I've got this big bad boy that's got a grinding wheel on it. Then I got this roto tool that basically has a cutoff disc type on it. I use this a lot to, how do I say this? If I put the pipe in my, if I mark the pipe, the tubing, put it in my vise, I will use this to get really, really, really close. What I use this for is if I've got something I really need to get out of there. You know, let's say that I didn't get anywhere close to getting the V cutting this. This sucker will cut V's all day. I mean, this will whop the whole tube off if I wanted to. Then I got my little Dremel that I will actually pass through the cope to make sure one last time that, you know, to make sure it's virtually airtight. So it does take a boatload of time, okay? If I had a notching tool that would work on 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch and 5/8. Well, it works on 3/4 inch okay, but it won't work on 5/8 very good. If I had one of those, then without a doubt, it'd probably go faster. But I'm in no race. So, sorry, naughty guys, I'm exhausted. Thanks for watching my videos, everybody, and rock on. Have a great night and be safe. Keep the emails coming. Keep them being constructive. And unless you've done it yourself with your hands, I don't need speculation and I don't need guessing. So if you want to chime in, but please, at least, if you're going to talk about my TIG welding, be a TIG welder. If you're going to talk about my metal work, be a metal worker. If you're going to talk about ultralights, be an ultralight expert. Okay? So rock on, everybody, and be safe and keep on aviating.